by American drones close to Ukraine could lead to an escalation, and Russia will respond proportionately to future intelligence gathering operations. On Wednesday, the comments came in a phone conversation between Sergei Shoigu and Pentagon boss Lloyd Austin after the United States accused the Russian Su-27 fighter jet of colliding with one of its Reaper surveillance drones, forcing it to crash into the Black Sea. Russia denied it deliberately brought the unmanned aerial vehicle down. It was noted that flights by American strategic lethal drones by the Crimea coastline were provocative in nature and created preconditions for an escalation of the situation in the Black Sea zone, a Defense Ministry statement quoted Shoigu as saying. Russia has no interest in such a development, but it will continue to respond proportionately to all provocations. It was the first military incident between Moscow and Washington since President Vladimir Putin sent forces to Ukraine in February 2022. Shoigu noted increased intelligence activities against the interests of the Russian Federation and non-compliance with the restricted flight zone declared by Moscow after its campaign in Ukraine had led to the incident, the ministry said. It was the first call between Austin and Shoigu since October, and General Mark Milley, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, had a similar call with his Russian counterpart, General Valery Gerasimov. In Indonesia, 2 of 3 police officers charged over a deadly crowd crush that left 135 people dead have been released, with just 1 jailed on charges of negligence leading to the loss of life, in decisions expected to be a further disappointment to the families of the victims. The district court in the Indonesian city of Surabaya, some 780 kilometers, 484 miles east of the capital, Jakarta, first permitted Bambang Sadiq Achmadi, who was head of the prevention unit of the Malang Regency Police, to walk free, saying there was no sufficient evidence to convict him. He later announced Wuya S. Wuya, the chief of operations of the Malang Regency Police, had also been acquitted. The only officer was jailed was Hasdarmawan, who led a unit of the paramilitary police squad known as Brimob, was sentenced to 18 months in prison. Last week, 2 March officials were jailed over the October 2022 crush, which came at the end of a hard-fought match between bitter rivals Arema FC and Persebaya Surabaya in Malang, East Java. Away fans were banned from the game, but spectators flooded onto the pitch after the final whistle. Police fired volleys of tear gas. Amidst the clouds of smoke, people rushed for the exit gates in panic, only to discover some of the gates were locked, trapping them inside. Police described the pitch invasion as a riot and said 2 officers were killed, but survivors accused them of overreacting. Footage showed officers using force, kicking and hitting fans with batons and pushing spectators back into the stands. An investigation team said by the Indonesian President Joko Widodo amidst national outrage over the deaths decided that the tear gas was the major cause of the crowd surge. Indonesia's human rights body came to the same conclusion, saying the use of tear gas banned by football's war governing body was indiscriminate and excessive. The prosecution can appeal the verdicts. Meanwhile, moonwalking U.S. astronauts of the future will have silkier and more flexible spacesuits as NASA is dumping the puffy white suit worn by Neil Armstrong and his fellow Apollo astronauts half a century ago. On Wednesday, the United States National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, launched the first prototype for a newly designed next-generation spacesuit, specially tailored and accessorized for the first astronauts expected to venture back to the moon's surface in the next few years. The future moonwear was exhibited at the Johnson Space Center in Houston during an event hosted for the media and students by Axiom Space. NASA awarded the Texas-based company a $228.5 million contract to build suits for the Artemis, the successor to the Apollo moon program. The Artemis program intends to return humans to the moon in late 2025 for the first time since the historic Apollo missions ended in 1972, a prior step towards an eventual voyage to Mars. The new suits, branded by Axiom as the Axiom Extravehicular Mobility Unit, or ASIMO for short, are more streamlined and flexible than the old Apollo suits, with a greater range of motion and variability in size and fit. The pressurized garment has numerous protective layers, a backpack with life support systems, as well as lights and a high-definition video camera mounted on top of the bubble-shaped helmet. The next generation spacesuits will not only permit the first woman to walk on the moon, but they will also open prospects for more people to explore and conduct science on the moon than ever before. NASA's Administrator Bill Nelson said designed to be worn for up to 8 hours at a time, the new suits will fit a broad range of potential wearers, accommodating at least 90% of the U.S. male and female population, NASA said. However, the exact look of the suits remain a closely protected trade secret. The company said the suits to be worn on the lunar South Pole by astronauts will be white because that is the best color to replicate the harsh sunlight on the moon's surface and protect the wearer from severe heat. The new suit has more functionality, more performance, more capability than the bulky version worn by Apollo astronauts, Vanessa Wilch, the Johnson Space Center director, said. A senior United States general said recovery of a U.S. surveillance drone that crashed after being intercepted by Russian fighter jets will be demanding given the deep waters in the Black Sea as reports emerge of Russian vessels at the crash site. General Mark Milley, chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, said remains of the uncrewed MQ-9 Reaper drone, which the U.S. claims was brought down by one of Russian Su-27 jets, clipping the drone's propeller, sank in waters as deep as 1,219 to 1,524 meters, that's 4,000 to 5,000 feet. It probably sank to some significant depths, so any recovery operation from a technical standpoint will be very difficult, Milley said, according to reports on Wednesday, adding that it will take several days before the U.S. will know for sure the size of the debris field. Moscow, which refutes that its jets were in physical contact with the drone, said it would try to recover the drone wreckage as reports emerged on Thursday of U.S. officials confirming that Russian ships had reached the crash site. 2 U.S. officials had confirmed the presence of Russian ships at the location of the crash in the Black Sea, according to reports. The Black Sea borders both Russia and Ukraine. Nikolai Patrushev, Russia's Security Council secretary, said on Wednesday that Russia would try a recovery operation for the U.S. spy drone. Milley said the U.S. had taken steps to make sure there will be no less of sensitive intelligence if the drone were to be salvaged by Russia. Patrushev also said the drone incident showed that the U.S. was involved in the war in Ukraine. This is another confirmation that they are directly involved in these actions in the war, he added. Milley also spoke with his Russian counterpart, Chief of the General Staff Valery Gerasimov, in a sporadic phone call on Wednesday, the Pentagon said. Lloyd Austin, U.S. Defense Secretary, also spoke with his Russian counterpart, Sergei Shoigu, after the incident but did not disclose details of their conversation. Still ahead, approximately 2.3 tons of natural uranium had gone missing from a site in Libya not under government control, the United Nations International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, has said, according to reports. IAEA Chief Rafael Grossi told the organization's member states this week that inspectors reported that 10 drums containing uranium ore concentrated had gone missing and were not present as earlier declared at the location in Libya. The organization will conduct more activities to clarify the circumstances of the removal of the nuclear material and its present location, the organization said in a statement on Wednesday, without providing more details on the site, according to more reports. The loss of knowledge about the present location of nuclear material may present a radiological risk as well as nuclear security concerns, the IAEA said, adding that reaching the site needed complex logistics. Under leader Muammar Gaddafi, Libya in 2003 abandoned its nuclear, chemical and biological weapons program after secret deliberations with the United States and the United Kingdom. Gaddafi's government had obtained filters that could enrich uranium as well as design information for a nuclear bomb, though the country made little advancements towards creating a nuclear weapon. Since the NATO-backed unrest and Gaddafi's fall in 2011, the country has been plagued by political crisis and competing militias establishing opposing alliances supported by foreign powers. Political control in the country remains split between a nominally interim government in the capital, Tripoli, in the west, and another in the east, backed by military strongman Khalifa Haftar. The last main armed confrontations only ended in 2020 and rare fighting continues. On more stories, ahead of South Korea-Japan summit, North Korea fires ICBM. North Korea has launched an intercontinental ballistic missile ICBM into its eastern waters just hours before South Korea's president was expected to fly to Japan for the first summit between the two countries in years, with the situation in nuclear-armed North Korea a major concern. On Thursday morning, South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said Pyongyang had fired what appeared to be a banned ICBM. The weapon flew towards the Korean peninsula's eastern waters after being launched from North Korea's capital, Pyongyang, at around 7:10 a.m., the military said in a statement. Japan also detected the missile, and the Coast Guard issued a warning to vessels to be vigilant of falling objects. The missile possibly landed in the waters outside Japan's exclusive economic zone after almost an hour in air, Defense Minister Yasukazu Hamada said. The landing site is about 250 kilometers, that's 155 miles, off the western island of Oshima, which is close to where other North Korean ICBMs have fallen after test flights. The launch is North Korea's first of an ICBM in a month, but followed a sequence of missile firing events this week amidst ongoing large-scale military exercises between South Korea and the United States, which Pyongyang considers hostile and a rehearsal for invasion. The newest launch also comes hours before South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol and Japan's Prime Minister Fumio Kishida are due to meet in Tokyo for the first bilateral summit in 12 years. Both South Korea and Japan are increasing defense spending and joint military exercises, which Yoon has said are vital for regional and global stability. Officials accused him of spending millions of dollars. 66-year-old former governor of Tamaulipas in northeast Mexico received the sentence in a U.S. District Court for southern Texas. Judge Rolando Olvera also ordered the former governor to surrender a Ruvalcaba pleaded guilty to business contracts in the state of Tamaulipas in northeast Mexico. Almdar Hamdani, federal prosecutor, hailed Wednesday's decision as bringing a corrupt politician to justice. Even if you are a governor of a Mexican state, we will not stand idly by when you use your position to wrongfully fill your pockets and violate the laws of the United States, Hamdani said in a press release issued by the U.S. Attorney's Office. Yarrington served as governor from 1999 to 2005, and during that time allegedly accepted $3.5 million in bribes from individuals and companies hoping to falsify business deals in his state. As a former member of Mexico's Institutional Revolutionary Party, PRI, once an important political force in the country, Yarrington Ruvalcaba was a candidate for president in 2005. He was charged in May 2013 and arrested while traveling in Italy in April 2017. Prosecutors allege he was using a fake name and passport at the time. Italian authorities approved his extradition to the U.S. the following year. U.S. authorities in the statement on Wednesday said they expect he will face removal proceedings to Mexico, where he also faces an investigation. The state of Tamaulipas serves as the base for one of Mexico's most powerful criminal organizations, the Gulf Cartel. Lastly, in Africa, Antony Blinken asked Ethiopia to strengthen peace on first post-war visit. On Wednesday, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken urged Ethiopia to guarantee accountability over the brutal Tigray conflict, but stated defended optimism at preserving peace on a trip that marked a relief of wartime rifts between the longtime allies. On the newest trip by a senior U.S. official to Africa as China and Russia makes inroads on the continent, Blinken offered $31 million in fresh humanitarian support, but stopped short of backing Ethiopia's readmission to a major trade pact. The top U.S. diplomat said better economic ties with Ethiopia relied on its commitment to both reconciliation and accountability over the war, which the United States approximates has cost about 500,000 lives. He met for a remarkably long 2.5 hours with Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, who was exasperated during the war after Blinken alleged that crimes against humanity had been committed. Blinken also met representatives of the Tigray People's Liberation Front TPLF and said that both sides stated commitments to implementing the November 2nd peace accord brokered in South Africa by the African Union with the U.S. support. He also held meetings with human rights groups and said they had reported a very significant drop in human rights violations and abuses in Tigray since the agreement. Blinken said that doesn't mean they have been eliminated, and indeed, we strongly urge all parties to the conflict to do everything possible to ensure that the cease entirely. Abiy, who did not let journalists into his meeting with Blinken, wrote on Twitter that he agreed with him to strengthen the long-standing bilateral relations between our countries with a commitment to partnership. Let's go on a short break, and when we come back, I'll bring you stories from Nigeria. Stay with us. Welcome back. We begin with parties caution INEC against beavers problems repeat. On Wednesday, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, started the distribution of sensitive materials for Saturday's governorship and House of Assembly polls. Political parties warned the electoral body also on Wednesday against a repeat of the bimodal voter accreditation system glitches and other hitches that characterized the February 25th presidential and National Assembly elections. The complaints about the conduct of the elections resulted in the rejection of the outcome of the polls by the parties which challenged the results in court. According to reports, there are indications that INEC has commenced deployment of sensitive materials in Lagos, Sokoto, Ondo, Ekiti, Edo, Bauchi, Kebbi, Osun, and many other states 3 days ahead of the exercise. The Commission took delivery of the ballot papers and results sheets from the Central Bank of Nigeria in Lagos yesterday. The exercise, led by Mr. Olusegun Agbaje, INEC Resident Electoral Commissioner for Lagos State, and the Commissioner of Police in Lagos State, Idowu Owohunwa, was monitored by various stakeholders. In Sokoto State, also on Wednesday, the sharing of all ballot papers and other materials began with the 23 local government areas in the state. Speaking at the event held at the premises of the CBN, the National Commissioner in charge of the state, Major General Modibo Alkali, retired, assured that the Commission will improve on the previous exercise in the state. The distribution of the sensitive materials to all local government areas of Benue State also started on Wednesday. The Public Relations Officer of INEC in the state, Terka Andiar, said that the materials were received from the state CBN office and subsequently circulated to all 23 local government councils. The administration of the election materials in Osun State was supervised by the Resident Electoral Commission, Dr. Mitu Agboke, at the CBN office in Oshogbo. The Commission in Ondo State expressed preparedness for the election, adding that it would deploy the beavers for the exercise. The Resident Electoral Commission in the state, Mr. Oyekola Oyelami, stated this on Wednesday while supervising the distribution of the sensitive and non-sensitive materials ahead of the election in Akure, the state capital. Federal government postpones population census to May. Nigeria's 2023 population and housing census, previously scheduled for end of this month, has been shifted to May 2023. Lai Mohammed, Minister of Information and Culture, made this known to newsmen on Wednesday at the end of the weekly meeting of the Federal Executive Council presided over by President Muhammadu Buhari. The minister explained that the decision to move the date was required by rescheduling of the gubernatorial election to March 18th. He also revealed that the council approved the sum of 2.8 billion naira for the National Population Commission, NPC, to procure some software to be used for the conduct of the census. According to him, there was a memo presented by the National Population Commission seeking for some software to allow them conduct the census in May this year. I believe because of the rescheduling of the elections, they cannot commence the census as scheduled. They sought council's approval for a contract to procure software for the census at the sum of 2.8 billion naira. And finally, on the news, inflation sets new high at 21.91% amidst currency crisis. in spite of contracting aggregate demand, falling purchasing power, and other indicators that highlight reduced consumption and slow business activities. Nigeria's headline inflation rate has reached 21.91%, a height not seen in past decades. Owing to rise in the cost of food and fuel, February's Consumer Price Index (CPI) posted a month-on-month change of 1.71%, a slower climb when equated with the 1.87% recorded in January. The slowdown in the month-on-month change suggests the intensity is weakening. Economists often use month-on-month changes in price to measure the present momentum of inflation. Unlike year-on-year change, the month-on-month rate isolates the trend from remote-based effects. According to the National Bureau of Statistics (NBS) newest reports released yesterday, on a year-on-year basis, the headline inflation rate was 6.21% points higher compared to the rate recorded in February 2022, which was 15.70%. This shows that the headline inflation rate year-on-year added in February 2023 when compared to the same month in the preceding year. Emphasizing that the surge in the cost of foods were responsible for the rise in the rate, NBS said the contributions of items on a class basis to the increase in the headline index are presented thus: bread and cereal 21.6%, actual and imputed rent 7.74%, potatoes, yam and other tubers 6.06%, vegetable 5.44% and meat 4.78%. NBS added the highest increases were recorded in prices of gas, passenger transport by air, liquid fuels and lubricants for personal transport equipment, vehicles, spare parts, solid fuel, etc. The core inflation, or the items less volatile farm produce, also slowed from 19.16% to 18.84% year-on-year growth last month, sustaining the waning aggregate demand. In the month, according to the data, food inflation on year-on-year analysis was highest in Kwara, 29.51%, Imo, 27.47%, and Lagos, 27.42%, whereas Sokoto, 18.54%, Jigawa, 19.67%, and Yobe, 21.89% recorded the slowest rise. The newest food security update of the World Bank released on Monday identified Borno and Yobe states as areas where food insecurity could decrease to a crisis condition in the next 3 months as the region plunged deeper into the dry season. To refresh our memories, Moscow promises to react proportionately to U.S. provocations. Over Indonesia's stadium crash, 2 freed, 1 police officer jailed. NASA launches Silkia spacesuits for future U.S. mission to Moon. General Milley says drone recovery hard as Russian ships at crash site, and United Nations report says loads of uranium missing from Libyan site. Remember, be brave to stand for what you believe in, even if you have to stand alone, according to Roy T. Bennett. I am Lois Turaki. Enjoy the rest of your day.